welcome to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, media controversies and perspectives. From women who broke the glass ceiling parading on Republic Day to riotous mobs desecrating national monuments. It was a week of pride as well as shame. We will go through all that with my distinguished panel of guests. But first, what made news? India showcased its national might at Rajpath on Republic Day. Of special mention were the women fighter pilots who have broken the glass ceiling so proudly. Even though this year's parade was truncated due to the pandemic challenge, there was no let-up in displaying the strength and unity of the Republic. The pride of the Republic Day turned to abject horror as riotous mobs broke through the barricades to run amok in the capital streets. They injured policemen at multiple places, scared common citizens and ended up desecrating Red Fort, where the national tricolour flies proudly. The nation watched in complete shock as the tractor parade turned into tractor horror. The President of India led the nation in condemning the unpardonable acts. Apart from honouring iconic personalities like Shinzo Abe and S.P. Balasubramaniam, the late singer, completely unsung heroes who have dedicated their entire life to uplifting the society, to art, culture and literature was selected for the Padma Awards once again this year. The concept of People's Padma, started by the NDA government, has given recognition to the life and contributions of countless such heroes in the past few years. It is finally becoming clear to the whole world that in these extremely challenging times, Indian economy appears to be the only island of hope for the world. In its World Economic Outlook update, International Monetary Fund (IMF) has projected an encouraging 11.5% growth rate for India. This means ours will be the only country to register double-digit growth amidst the crisis. Fake news is not just child's play anymore. The fake news industry is fast becoming a serious national challenge. From pulling in the country's first citizens, the Rashtrapati Bhavan, to threatening violence on the streets, fake news is now a monster which cannot be controlled by just the law. Each one of us needs to remain vigilant against it. After those major headlines of the week, let us take up one by one a couple of those serious issues with my guests this evening. I have two very distinguished invitees here who will explain to us the issues we have in perspective. I have with me Abhinav Prakash, a well-known academician but also a political analyst. You have been watching him on TV and reading in newspapers frequently. Welcome Abhinav Prakash to Media Scan. I am happy to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I also have with me Smita Prakash, another very well-known media industry personality. You know her as the editor of ANI, Asia News International. She is also a well-known panelist on television channels. Welcome Smita Prakash to Media Scan. This is your first appearance with me and I'm very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, the nation watched with abject shock and horror as riotous mobs ran amok on Delhi streets, breaking barricades, injuring policemen, scaring away citizens, and ending up in desecrating the iconic Red Fort, where the tricolour flies majestically. All this on the day of our national pride, the Republic Day. Who were these people? If they were protesting farmers, what was to be gained by taking the law into their hands so shamelessly? Were there infiltrators in them? And if so, why did the protesting unions and their leaders allow such infiltrators to hijack the agitation? How long can we test the patience of common citizens? And have these shocking incidents left an indelible mark on the right to legitimate protest? All these and many more questions are floating in the media. We will discuss each one of them. But before that, let's listen in to what Rashtrapati Ramnath Kovind had to say while addressing the joint session of Parliament on this particular issue.
पिछले दिनों हुआ तिरंगे और गणतंत्र दिवस जैसे पवित्र दिन का अपमान बहुत दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। जो संविधान हमें अभिव्यक्ति की आज़ादी का अधिकार देता है, वही संविधान हमें सिखाता है कि कानून और नियम का भी उतनी ही गंभीरता से पालन करना चाहिए। मेरी सरकार ये स्पष्ट करना चाहती है कि 3 नए कृषि कानून बनने से पहले पुरानी व्यवस्थाओं के तहत जो अधिकार थे तथा जो सुविधाएं थी, उनमें कहीं कोई कमी नहीं की गई है, बल्कि इन कृषि सुधारों के जरिए सरकार ने किसानों को नई सुविधाएं उपलब्ध कराने के साथ साथ नए अधिकार भी दिए हैं।
I'll come to Smita Prakash first. Smita Prakash, being a journalist in the field but also covering Parliament for so many years, you know that Rashtrapati Ramnath Kovind's address is a customary procedure of the budget session. How sad that the President had to mention this incident in his speech, which happened, these incidents on such an important day. Where do you think the media has placed itself in covering the violence of that day, considering media persons themselves were under attack at many places?
That's true. It is sad that the president had to mention this. It's also sad that it's become literally customary for the opposition to boycott the president's address.
Yes.
It's really ridiculous, right? I mean, it's customary to attend and it's out of the ordinary to boycott. But such is the circumstances in the past couple of years that it's become customary to boycott. And that is really a perversion of our parliamentary democracy. I'm sorry. This is something, it's a tradition. They should attend it. You have your politics aside, keep that aside just for that address of the president. Kuch garima hoti hai. You have to respect the position, the constitutional position of the president. And I think it is wrong to boycott the president's address. But then I guess such is today's politics. The second thing which you said was, you know, about media covering incidents like this. I think what happens also is that when covering a riot, when covering this kind of a clash, especially when you know, your sentiments are at its peak, I think, you know, when it's a communal clash, then you may not be an interested party so much. But when it comes to, you know, literally policemen versus farmers, yes, there are people who are not farmers in that group. They could be locals who have come to support the farmers. They could be, you know, family members. They could be professional protesters who join in every protest which happens in and around Delhi. There are all these people who are there. And there are pitfalls in a live commentary. I think that is where all the trouble occurs, because our voting has become literally live or nothing. There was a time that, you know, we would cover like a news agency or a newspaper. We would cover the event, ask the person, "Aapka naam kya hai? Kahan se aaye hain?" And then ask the question. And then you go back and you edit it. Maybe you don't have the wherewithal at that time to go and cross-check. But vox pops, yes, understandable. But now news has become just interviewing random people. You know, anybody and everybody who
what you are trying to flag is, with everything going live most of the time, and with you know, people randomly talking to people on the streets or any place of incident, this provision or this you know, this benefit of editing things which may not be in the best interests has been lost in technology. Is that what you are saying?
Correct. And also the kind of words which you use in live commentary.
Yes.
You know, like we say in Hindi, it's called bhadkau language. Now, I think what happens is that when you are in that situation, if you have not got that maturity to understand that a sentence here or there could make law enforcement so much harder.
Correct.
But just taking the name of a religion or just taking the name of a protester without cross-checking, it can result in tremendous pressure on people who are trying to control and calm down their people.
The filter of journalistic language is lost, you know, in such. But I'll come back to you on the same issue, because we cannot really forego technology. Complete live random coverages have become the order of the day. We have to find a way out of it. But before that, allow me to bring in Abhinav Prakash here. Abhinav Prakash, I think it's good I have you here on the panel because while Smita Prakash is a hardcore full-time media personality, you are an academician with a the mind of a political analyst. Perhaps you can give us a better and an objective perspective about professional protesters, something which Smita Prakash just mentioned, the genuine people who are aggrieved or they are afraid that they may be aggrieved, even if it is misplaced, and some common citizens who have nothing to do either way, but they are caught in this entire melee. How do you look at such situations?
Yes, first of all, we have to understand that Republic Day is not the day of the government in power or of the Prime Minister, it's the day of India.
Yes.
This Republic Day is the day when India adopted its constitution and became a sovereign democracy. So to the very idea of holding a parade parallel to the Republic Day parade is wrong in my opinion. You could have done it a day before, you could have done it a day after it, you could have done it in the evening. But by holding a parade parallel to the Republic Day parade itself, in my opinion, is a direct, let's say, contempt of the Republic of India and the authority of the state. So that is the first thing. The second thing is, yes, there was violence, but I don't know why are people surprised by it, because these protests, these union protests have been violent from the very beginning. They have been vandalizing railways, they have been vandalizing towers in Punjab and Haryana, they have been disrupting meetings of the Chief Minister of Haryana, they have been blocking roads and harassing millions of people. The businesses are shutting down. The daily
you are saying it was building up to this, and there were already enough indications of it in previous weeks.
Exactly. So these protests were not. They always had this very strong undercurrent of this violent behavior, and on the Republic Day we saw that what was brewing for so long. So I'm not surprised at the violence, but the point is that we cannot blame all the farmers for it. There might be, there are many farmers out there who are simply there because they're scared, because there's lots of misinformation that your lands will be taken away. So you see the interviews of the farmers who are there, so they say, we don't want to give up our land. So they actually think that the land is being taken away by these laws. Right. So they are there because of misinformation, and they're not responsible for violence. But of course, there's this entire lobby which is at work, and which is not just the farmers' protest. You've seen that in the CA protest, students' protest, any protest which has been happening. You're seeing for the past 7-8 years, even before the 2014, that wherever something happens, they come there, they push the movement towards the maximalist demands so that there is no resolution, and there is the attempt to provoke violence.
Are you saying that the people who are genuinely affected, or they think they are affected by that particular subject, even if they are looking for a resolution, it is these professional protesters who egg them on not to, go for an agreeable solution?
Exactly, because the aim is to provoke the state repeatedly into violence. So on 26 January, this entire mayhem was deliberately done. The assault on the Red Fort is the symbol of the Indian state. You can't just go and storm it in the name of the people. But the point is, they wanted the police to open fire, they wanted the government to use force, so that the state is dragged down into street battles and it loses its legitimacy. So then you will have the pictures, the stories of how brutally people were beaten up by the state. And this is basically a long-term agenda to build up the anger of the people against the state. So we have people working in every protest, not just the farmers' protest.
We also saw a lot of messages and posts on social media of people who were, planning to project it as Jallianwala 2.0, providing they would have provoked the forces and the law enforcing agencies to a point when they would have to fire, etc. However, because this is a media scan, I want to focus more on the aspects of the media industry. Coming back to you, Smita Prakash, as you said, and we all know that such situations are pretty challenging for journalists also. They have the burden of being neutral, but at the same time, a lot can go wrong. At the same time, they are under attack themselves. They have to think of their life and safety. My question to you is, we know that live telecasts, random live videos and such things are now They are here to stay. We cannot forego technology. In such situations, how do you think we can give viewers the real-time coverage, but also not make it provocative or something which can jeopardize security and the safety of people?
See, in the newsroom, basically what we do is, at least what we should do, and most mature news channels do it, is that when live coverage is happening and you realize that things are going out of control, you cut it. You don't let it go live. You just cut it and you go to an analyst and let it record on one side and then check the visuals, and you do something called a deferred live, which is not live. You know, this is something that is being done on a regular basis in Jammu Kashmir, because there is live action which happens, there are terrorists inside place, and then there is police action, or there is paramilitary force action or army action. So you can jeopardize the lives of both the soldier as well as the civilians around that area where the terrorists are lodged. Now there are SOPs regarding how this is to be done. It's done in conflict situations, but somehow when it comes to civilian areas of the plains or of non-conflict zones like Jammu Kashmir or Northeast, these SOPs are not followed. And especially we saw this happening during the Shaheen Bagh protest. It happened during the Bangalore scuffles which happened. And then, we've seen it again and again. Now, what's happening at the Singhu border, what happened in Republic Day, it was, I mean, I'm not saying that no channel should have shown what happened with the flag, which was not the tricolor unfurled on the Red Fort. Maybe that shock element was necessary. So there are two ways of looking at it. I think it's the editor's...
Yes, please complete.
It's the editor's job at that time. Should he stop that coverage which happened? Let me remind, when a monument or when a temple or a mosque or something is being attacked, none of us show it. No. We don't show an idol which is broken. We don't show a religious
place.
But none of us fathomed that the Red Fort would see this. I mean, I don't think, Smita, you or Abhinav or me, we ever thought, of course, it was building up to it. If you notice that the Khalistanis on social media kept saying that we will give you reward to do it. But when it actually happened, it was such a shocker. Romte khade ho gaye the, that what is this? You don't want to see this. It was very upsetting, very distressing, at least for patriotic Indians. So there was this editorial decision, should we run it or should we stop it? But then it was so compelling and said that let us all rethink about whatever preset notions we have about how far.
So can we say that just like the media industry along with the governments and the law enforcing agencies, the police and security agencies, we have conscientiously prepared SOPs for coverage in conflict situations, particularly in states like Jammu Kashmir, some parts of the Northeast India. Perhaps it is time that in conflict situations which arise suddenly in the rest of the country, in the heartland, of course it's an editorial call, but it's time to come together, put our heads together and build up a set of SOPs, because conflict situation is not going to be limited to one territory or other. We are seeing constant provocation every day.
Agreed. I don't think these SOPs are in place, because if you recall just a couple of 10 days back or something like that, when the Capitol Hill was when the mob into the Capitol Hill, so the channels there also don't have SOPs.
No, we all saw it real time.
So there too they didn't know, but it took minutes for those channels to say that this was domestic terrorism. Right?
Correct.
Some of us were wondering, is it an act of terror? But then, those editors in those news channels decided that if their parliament, which is the Capitol Hill, is attacked, it is domestic terrorism. So
right. So I think what you are saying is, of course, it's always an editorial call, but one may support, or even if not support, one may have one view politically this way or that. But when it comes to certain situations, a quick, at the moment call has to be taken about what is in the interest of the people of the country and what is not. I will just take a very quick 30-second remark from Abhinav Prakash on one issue before I move on to the next subject of discussion this evening. Abhinav Prakash, we were discussing the joint session of Parliament and the address of the Rashtrapati ji on the first day of budget session. What kind of a message do you think has gone out with the opposition parties deciding to boycott this important day, staying away from the address of the president?
Well, I think it's a very negative thing which has happened, because in India, we started with, saying that in the past 2 years, that parliament should not make law, the people on the street should be making laws. So if protesters should be having a street veto on the parliament. It did not stop there. Then we saw the Republic Day parade can be challenged by a parade. It did not stop there. Then we saw the desecration of the national flag, and people said, how does it matter? It did not stop there. Now, when we have the boycott of the president himself by the opposition, because president is the head of the state, he's not the head of the government. If you have some grievances or opposition to the government, you can have it, but you can't boycott the president who represents Indian state. So I think this is a very negative message. This is
there is an entire session. The entire session is there for the opposition parties and their members to raise their concerns. However, allow me to move on to the next subject of discussion on the table this evening, a related subject to what we are discussing just now. As flagged earlier, fake news is no child's play anymore. It can demean the highest constitutional authority of the country. It can threaten national security and cause serious law and order challenges. It can breach social peace and cause communal disharmony. Even more regretful is when well-known media persons and political personalities indulge in fake news, and some do not even apologize for it. What does this say about their responsibility as citizens, as public figures, whom the people look up to? Let me come to Smita Prakash on this first. Smita Prakash, it is always said that the social media has given voice to the voiceless, people who had no outlet, who had no platform to put forth their views, but they were serious, conscientious citizens. They found a place to express themselves. However, with the kind of things that have come to light, fake news being shared and shared widely, and then people simply delete and they get away with it without even apologizing, do the people realize the kind of damage they can cause? How much of a problem is fake news today?
I'm conflicted about this.
Okay.
There are many who say that, this social media is a bad thing. And because they are there, they spread fake news. Yes, of course. There's a lot of fake news which happens, or there's a lot of propaganda that happens on social media, agree. But one thing is there, that, there were journalists who could write, because they were the intermediaries between people and politicians, people and actors, people and sports persons, people and business houses. They were the intermediaries, they told the story, right? And even the big league guys we talk about, whom we used to consider as idols and what propelled us to get into journalism, icons of journalism. And it was just their view, and if they reported wrong, there was no way that people could say, Hare, what you're doing is wrong. And
yes,
now,
I remember when we were students, newspapers were the gospel.
So, but what is, they were making mistakes too. They were doing fake news too. They were doing that too. But, they were like godlike figures. And then came social media, and it sliced the ego firstly. They were no longer, none of us are big league journalists anymore. We are all our egos have been completely crushed. And if any of us think that we are the sole storytellers, that all that we speak is yarn and truth, no, it isn't.
Yes, anybody, you may be anybody, but anyone on a platform is open to question you. You have to answer, or you can run away if you want.
All of us, we have 20, 30 years of experience in journalism.
Right.
But I can say that, Arey, ye aisa hai, this guy is wrong. And somebody in my newsroom might tell me that, who's just got 2 years of experience, can come up to me and say that what you're doing is wrong, what you're saying is wrong.
Allow me to bring in Abhinav Prakash here. This is a very important, actually, discussion that we are having. Abhinav Prakash, Smita is saying that social media is actually an empowering tool, and it's not like fake news is happening today. It was always there. We did not have the means to expose it. So whatever it might be, there is no need to get worried about it, because there are people out there whom you have to face, you have to answer, and perhaps something will come out of it. But how do you look at this challenge of fake news, particularly after what we have seen in the past few days, demeaning the office of the president and such things, false news about the riots?
I agree with Smitaji that the fake news is not a new phenomenon. The mainstream media, the TV news channels, and the newspapers were doing it all along, right? So it's nothing new as such. But now what has happened is that it has become democratized. So everyone can run fake news, everyone can run hashtags, and it can go viral. So in the case of the farms protest, if you see, the entire thing that the farm laws will take away the Kisan's land is a fake news which has been made viral, and which people not believe is because of the WhatsApp and the social media. The yesterday's mobilization at Ghazipur was also because of the social media, that the police has come to assault the people, So this fake news is something, it's a very difficult subject to understand for us, how to control it. But I think we have to just live with it, because the alternative is to have more regulation and control on the social media, which is very difficult, because most of the social media platforms are not owned by Indians, and they openly defy the Indian law. The Twitter and Facebook, they are in complete violation of Indian law as we speak today. And this is a problem which everyone has been grappling with, but I'm afraid there is no solution as of yet, apart from, let's say, having a credible news channel, let's say the government news channel or mainstream news channels, which are actually credible in the eyes of the people and which work professionally, which can give out the clear picture of the events.
Right, sir. So very clearly, we have been there before, viewers, but today again in this episode, one thing has come out very, very clearly, and that is regulating or trying to put some kind of restrictions on the social media is much more difficult than the mainstream media platforms or media industry. Hence, what it seems the most workable solution at present would be for ourselves to be careful, to check, recheck, verify, re-verify whatever we put out there on those platforms. When I say we, I do not mean just journalists. All citizens of the country must understand their responsibility about what they are writing, or even forwarding or reposting from other people, and perhaps we'll reach a position when fake news will not remain such a challenge anymore. With that, viewers, I'm afraid we have completely overshot our time this evening. I must thank both my guests here, Smita Prakash, who joined us for the first time on Media Scan. Thank you very much for coming and telling us your perspective, your experience, your understanding of such difficult situations. Thank you once again. Abhinav Prakash, a well-known media personality, and you have heard him before on Media Scan. Thank you once again, Abhinav Prakash, for joining us. Good night. With that, viewers, it's time to say good night. Thank you for watching.